Fuel prices went to a record 211 shillings at the pump on the 14th of September, and we saw the effects almost immediately. Transport in some areas went up. Maybe not yet seen the price of food having changed, not yet, but is that likely to happen? Okay, we're having a conversation about that this morning, and our guest to help us in that conversation is Martin Chomba, and he's the chairman of the Petroleum Outlets Association of Kenya. He's been our guest before. Martin, good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
How are you?
I'm very okay. I can't complain other than for the new development in the industry.
You have fuel in your car? Do you have fuel in your car?
Maybe just to get by.
So this way, the car wouldn't move without the fuel.
Exactly. So now, I think that's the measure of your wellness nowadays. Did you spend a little bit more on transport? Did you spend a little more to get fuel in your vehicle? That's the measure of wellness, And so thanks for being here. Welcome to the hot seat. It is hot.
Thank you.
And as we go into that conversation, our guest host for this hour, actually for the whole day, and it's been great having Abdullahi Alas here with us. And as we get into that, CT is going to welcome you and start off with a proverb from Malawi.
Rocks need no protection from the rain.
Full stop. Martin.
That's it. Simple proverb. Rocks need no protection from the rain.
What do you think about that, Martin?
I think the proverb is quite telling. I was raised by my grandma, and I think we have similar proverbs in Kenya. And I would want to think that proverb speaks about natural adaptations. That if just like they say that the tiger does not need to announce its tigritude.
The tiger, the real tiger, or tiger cheetah?
Not tiger cheetah, tiger leopard.
Tiger leopard. Which tiger are we talking about? Yeah.
Oh God. One got to be very careful what they say in this Kenya. Yeah, so I think it speaks to that natural adaptations that sometimes you are out there in the cold and you just have to brace yourself, because I think for you to survive, you don't have much of a choice.
You said there are proverbs in the community you come from.
Yes.
You know of a similar proverb?
A similar proverb.
Yes.
It does not speak exactly like that, but if I were to paraphrase it,
paraphrases that we hear.
It talks about my grandmother was very fond of this because she's the one who raised me, and she used to tell me when a cow gives birth, you realize that it has a way of cleaning the calf with the tongue. So she used to tell me, when a cow gives birth and dies in the process, the calf will have to do that cleaning itself.
Oh.
So she always encouraged me in this life, and she always told me that you could be being raised up by your grandma, but you have the ability to clean yourself.
Well, there you go.
Well said.
Okay. In ways of application of this proverb to today's situation. So let's look at a little bit of what has happened historically. And historically in this conversation is 5 days ago, right?
Yeah.
Everybody dreads the 14th of the month because IPRA will come and do the thing that they normally do.
Ile kitu.
Yes. And for the last couple of months, on the 14th. Every 14th. And this time, it hits everybody, and it hit hard, right? So before we start aiming the gun at you in fault, let's understand then who you represent and what the Association of
Outlets
Association, the Petroleum Outlets Association actually does.
Okay. So, as I said, my name is Martin Chomba. Who is Martin Chomba? Martin Chomba is a guy that was bred and raised in the upcountry in a place called Kirinyaga. And then after high school, did not have much to do, but started doing a business of selling kerosene in a place called Kibera. And sold kerosene with the chupas all the way, Kibera, Katwikira, Shiranga, Kisumu Ndogo, Karanja Road, then upgraded to Kangemi. And after which Umoja and the rest, as they say, is history.
When you say upgrading, what did you do differently?
I saved enough to go to a place where I thought the purchasing power was higher than where I was. So that's how I went to Kangemi.
You grew your business.
Yeah, and then grew the business, then to Umoja, as the hierarchies go, until now I resorted into sale and transportation of bulk petroleum.
The places you went to were very densely populated places.
Very.
So you chose them specifically?
Yes, very deliberate.
And the consumption of kerosene was also very high in these places.
Yeah.
Okay.
Given the condition, their incomes, they are predisposed to use a lot of kerosene as opposed to other means that were a bit elitist and lofty.
Okay.
Yeah, like gas. In our days, I'm sure you're laughing, but I'm sure in your day as well, somebody using gas.
No, kerosene was the thing.
To behold.
Even what you call those lamps.
Yes.
There's one in my community that as a child, it's a small koroboi with a cloth which you use as it's a lamp.
As the latent,
Yes, but we refer to it in my language. I'm suffocating with laughter. The reason is, if you just
that's the name of the lamp.
we jokingly
You're not
call it
actually
that.
suffocating.
Yeah, but you want to laugh, but you can't laugh because if you laugh, it goes off,
Voila.
and you are studying.
and you're studying, so you don't laugh.
So come from a place where you are now selling kerosene, and then now you went on to
the depot. Now I became the people they call the reseller until I grew up now to also own an outlet. So I'm saying this to let the people know that I've been within the value chain for some time, for about 25 years now. Since 1998. I may not know very many things, but I have some authority when it comes to the sales and distribution of petroleum in the country.
Okay.
So the non-franchised market for the longest time was very fragmented. And
what is a franchised market?
the franchised
Then you can tell us what a non-franchised market is.
The franchised market is the petrol stations that you see who have the big names, the multinationals. So when you pass by, those are the petrol stations. Today, if you talk to a common Kenyan and you ask them about petroleum sale in this country, they'll mention to you the big names.
Sure.
But the opposite is true. The reality is that out of 4,300 petrol stations in this country, 68% is non-franchised market. And non-franchised, I mean the one that people call independent, but I usually tell people that is a bit subjective because you are telling me I'm independent of who. Others call us non-branded, and I tell them no, I'm branded. I have my own brand. It's only that it's not as big as you may want it to be. So we call ourselves the non-franchised. We are not franchised by the multinational. We account for about 50% throughput of all petrol sold in this country. We are the people who fuel the rural economy. The borders are the centers. Every village that you come from today has somebody with a petrol dispensing pump, and that is the person that is fueling the rural economy. These are the people, when last year they had no fuel, everybody would congregate to the nearest center, and it was impossible for them to fuel borders, 1,000 of them at a go.
Right.
And that precipitated the fuel glitch that we had last year to an extent that the country was at a standstill. When we advised the government that they were able to give us that product, that problem has not been repeated. But the problem that brought about that issue has been creeping. So we organize ourselves around an organization we call POAK, so that we are no longer fragmented, because it has left us as scavengers to the interests of the big boys.
When you say that, because look, scavenger means that you take what's left, right?
Yes, because...
So you're saying in terms of product that comes into the country, you basically get the fuel that everybody else has declined to take up,
yes,
and that is what you sell.
Well, let me tell you what happens. The multinationals today, they import fuel for us, but they do not import for us. They import for us when it's conducive. They'll sell to us. When it's not conducive in pricing, they don't sell to us. There's no law that mandates them to sell to us. So we are literally scavengers. But we are the biggest market in this country. That works against two things. It works against national security in terms of supply of petroleum in this country. And it also works to disenfranchise the growth of the independent or non-franchised petroleum, indigenous petroleum dealers in this country.
I'm going to have to ask, what prevents you from importing fuel?
As you know, the people I'm talking about are not the typical business people who come to invest in this country, who have sat down and have come up with a business plan. I've had to do a lot of work to organize these people around an organization, because these people, they do it as a default. It's not by design. The way somebody wakes up in the morning and they put up a kiosk outside, they are selling burgers. It is the same way this person does that.
Okay.
So they don't have leverage of capital in a capital-intensive affair of importation of this country, petroleum. So that's why we are organizing them and forming. We have formed a SACCO. The last time I was here, I was telling you we were about to. Now we have formed a SACCO, and it's receiving savings so that we can leverage on importation.
Okay. I mean, so how would that bear on what we are seeing today? If you're able to then leverage and then say, okay, well, we can affect or influence when it comes to importation. And here we are looking at rising costs. You don't have a say also when it comes to whether you will decrease by 4 shillings, increase by 5 shillings. What IPRA says goes. You will sell at is what goes. So you don't have a choice, do you?
No, we don't have a choice. But you see what we do, we are not resigning to fate. Because resigning to fate would be, we just sit back and say, let the importers import, and for us, we just remain scavengers. What we have realized is that if you don't blow your own trumpet, people will not even realize you have one, leave alone blowing it for you. So what we are doing today is organizing ourselves in that. Remember, most of these multinationals, and I'll tell you with no prejudice, that most of them, the government of Kenya does not own even 1 liter of fuel. Even when it's purports to regulate, they regulate other people's property or goods. They don't have 1 liter of oil. This petroleum in this country is owned by the multinationals, who answers to their shareholders. They have they are not obligated to the country per se, but other than for the conducive business environment for them to make maximum profits. So as indigenous, we are looking at it this way. If we become a formidable force, the way they plow back the profits to their country is what we are able to do in our country.
Before we get to that, because then we're going to ask ourselves, okay, then what essentially would be sorted? We're looking at the ripple effect of these prices having gone through the roof, because they have.
Yes.
It's never been this high, number one. Number two, it has never jumped this percentage at once. Okay? So what are we likely to see? Already we saw by Saturday, we saw transport costs, public sector start to rise. Okay? What else are we likely to see over the next couple of days, couple of weeks?
The truth is, we are likely to see an astronomical rise in what we've been crying about, the cost of living, because petroleum is the driver. It is the back on which every other economic activity around the country, be it production, transport, everything rides on petroleum. Because even those who are not using diesel and petrol for transport, they are consuming goods that have been transported by the traders. So at the end of the day, it is going to affect everybody. However, this problem, in my view, unless now government comes up with ingenious ways of, and I don't think they are short of knowledgeable people to help them around the issue, is that we are not likely to see a reprieve soon, unless something happens. Because, as I've told you, the country Kenya, we don't have a petroleum industry per se. I keep telling people we have petroleum logistics industry. We transport, we distribute. We have no leverage whatsoever when it comes to determination of prices out there. So in this country, we are susceptible to the shocks that are happening across the world. Today, one of the biggest problems that people probably do not understand is when prices, out of the 100% production of petroleum in the world, 40% lies in the hands of countries we call OPEC plus. These OPEC plus, their economies, most of them entirely rely on petroleum. So anytime there's an oversupply in the market, in the world, it affects their economy. And so what they do, they cut supply to spike demand. And when they do that, like now 3 months ago, I can tell you the prices were plummeting, were dipping. We were looking at prices coming to around 150 in Kenya. But 3 months ago, they realized this and they cut supply with about 3.6 million barrel per day. Why? Because when there is too much fuel in the market, it tanks their economy. Because the prices now, you remember, the thing about production of petroleum, even if the products were to be free, they would still pay to keep the wells going.
Running.
Because the cost of restarting a well, if you stop it, it's too much. So what they do before that comes, they cut their production. And when they spike demand, for us, we feel it. Remember today, we have other things that are going against the petroleum industry. Like Russia today accounts for 12% production of petroleum. Their petroleum is under sanction. The likes of US today, everybody is crying, yet they are the number one producers of petroleum because of the issues precipitated by OPEC. So governments worldwide will have to come up, and especially in the global south, will have to come up with ingenious ways of mitigating the prices of petroleum.
How do you? Because what we're saying essentially that the organization OPEC, for example, essentially dictates, I guess.
Yes, they do.
If you have it, you dictate it, right?
Yes.
So they dictate really what these prices. They participate primarily in the dictation of these prices.
Exactly.
And we are saying that it doesn't really matter what happens. They already know that in order for them to keep their economies running, they're going to have to charge a minimum in order for you to receive this. So even if there was oil flowing everywhere in these countries, to keep these things running, they have to charge a price.
Yes.
And even if it was free, they had to charge something. So what we're saying is that the price of fuel in your country, when it comes to you, is not necessarily determined by the price of oil per barrel, but what it is determined by is the prices that have been preset by OPEC to make sure that they can keep the economies running.
Actually, precisely, the reason why they have to do what they do is to maintain the prices of Brent and the crude at a certain level. That if it plummets beyond there, it starts affecting the economies.
Sure.
So internally, there are things that also have become a conundrum. For instance, I'll tell you, 2018, before the introduction of VAT, a litre of petrol was trading at around 108, 110. Today, the price have more than doubled. But the introduction of VAT have brought in a cost, a tax cost of about 22 to 25 shillings.
Okay, but now the thing is, Martin,
yes,
this is known. What you're saying is not new. We've known this for years. But still, countries are able to shoulder the pain of that cost for the people living in their countries, for their consumers. Why don't we see that action?
Opera, what is the difference in terms of pricing from what you people sell and what we buy at the petrol stations in terms of pricing?
The price that is after the landing cost.
Yes, landing, when you sell to borders and all those mamambos. Because in the border towns, where I come from you will see those chupas. Small one, big one. Even in the villages, they are lying outside and then you buy, you put.
Yes.
So the question is, what is the difference in pricing and what is the difference in quality? Because in Mandera, I don't fuel from those because there is
that narrative.
It comes with the black market. It belongs to the black market. So sometimes it comes from Somalia, sometimes it comes from Ethiopia. And because I'm worried about the quality and the safety for my engine, I still use the one for 129. Because last year it was 134, today it's 221. But I still got that safety because I might use cheaper in terms of fuel, but the engine cost it's going to come with if it's not clean, if they added water, or if it's not clean with the injector of the car and all those. So how safe is the fuel you sell, and what's the difference in pricing?
Now, you see, in pricing, let me start by pricing and say the pricing structure is actually the profits made from petroleum are regulated by EPRA at 12 shillings and about 30 cents. Out of the 12 shillings, 4 shillings is given to the importer, the person that gets that fuel from Abu Dhabi, from Saudi Arabia. Then 4 shillings is given to the investor, the person who built the petrol station. Because I'll tell you, the guys those petrol stations that you're seeing, they do not belong to these multinationals. Most of them are franchised. They are private. You build your own petrol station somewhere and then you give them the brand. So the cost of that investment is given 4 shillings. Then the other 4 shillings is given to the person who is the dealer. Because the person who is the owner of the petrol station is not necessarily the dealer.
Sure.
So that is their cost structure. When it comes to quality, it is true. And that is what was used to demonize our market way before we became organized. The government has since instituted a cost. If you look at it, you'll see in the cost build-up called anti-adulteration tax. The reagent of mixing petroleum and making it lose its potency or its value is kerosene. And the reason why that is because kerosene was the cheapest product in Kenya, because it was not taxed as it should, because it was ostensibly looked at the one that takes care of mwananchi. Never mind that world over, kerosene is more expensive than super. Actually, the prices goes, kerosene comes first because it's jet fuel, then diesel, then petrol.
Okay.
So today, because of anti-adulteration tax, I will not speak for the fuel that find itself, because that's a security issue through the border from Ethiopia and other places. But the petroleum coming from Kenya, I will assure you today, 100%, it is not possible to mix. Because if you look at the price differential between diesel and kerosene today, it does not give the economic incentive that it used to give for people to do adulteration. And that's why you find the report of EPRA will talk about compliance at 98 point something percent.
Yes, I want to ask Bwana Chomba a question. Now, when this circle that they've set up for the, what they call the non-franchised group of petroleum businessmen
and women,
thank you so much. What direct benefit will it provide for those who belong to this group? Secondly, how will the other citizens and the consumers of that product benefit?
The reason why we are organizing ourselves is because the people that have been making policies in the country have been making policies for us without us. Because we are not represented in the place where those policies are made in a way that we are able to speak for the common person. So the lenses through which the petroleum industry is addressed is what I said, the elitist and a bit lofty multinationals view. What you call the bird's eye view. Now we want to have the warm eye view, so that we are also able to say where it pinches. For instance, you realize that there is a 30% allocation that is supposed to be imported in this country to this country by National Oil Corporation to take care of the independent market.
Yes.
Unfortunately, National Oil Corporation, for like most of the other parastatals in the past, have not lived to their billing. And more often than not, they are scavenging for fuel as we scavenge.
Oh,
they are not able to.
Are you saying they don't even import that 30% they're supposed to import?
They are not able to sufficiently fuel their own stations today, and they will need a restructuring. I don't know what they are doing internally, but I hear there is a discussion to revamp National Oil.
But I have to ask this question.
Yes, please.
Government businesses, business meaning government ministries, government parastatals are mandated to fuel at Kenya, the National Oil. So they already have a captive market, and the captive market is huge. Okay, county governments, I think, follow suit. So it isn't for lack of business. So it's this eternal question we're asking Kenyans: where does the money go? Because they do get money at some point.
It's what I think distorts market. You know, one thing we must appreciate is that in Kenya we are a capitalist economy.
Yes, we are.
And the more you have a market system where there's too much government in business, then it does not really cut. To me, the panacea would be to have less of government in National Oil Corporation, such that it is run
like a business.
Yes. And it will have to have declare returns for the government.
So essentially, National Oil is run like a parastatal.
Yes,
okay.
It's been run in the past as a parastatal, and I think that has been its Waterloo. Today, if you ask me, I hear there's a discussion around revamping it, which is welcome. If they can make it happen, then we are the market for the National Oil. We are the ready market for National Oil.
Don't get caught clapping too early.
Yes.
If they revamp it and what comes out is exactly what was there before, but with a new logo.
Yeah, that would be very unfortunate.
And nothing will really have changed.
Yeah.
Not really.
I'm saying this to tell them that they have already market in us, because ostensibly they are supposed to take care of us. But now when we realize that they were not living to their billing, is when we thought, why don't we organize ourselves so that the benefits that would accrue to National may now be transferred to us. Amongst them is the concessions that we would be seeking from the government. I don't want to speak of them on here right now.
Fine.
But because we have a plan that we are thinking we can present to the government, and if it is applied, then most of us traders, the indigenous traders, get some leverage, and that leverage, the beauty of the leverage that we get is that it is transferred directly to the common person, because we are the guys who employ those people in the villages, because every other station has 3, 4, 5 to 8 workers.
Martin, I almost hear you say that as this association of retailers, that you're not making as much as the others.
Precisely.
Why?
Because
then you almost seem to be on the side of the rest of the Kenyans who are crying that fuel is so much more expensive this month than it was last month. But you're making a profit. I think going to the question that Abdullahi was asking.
Let me explain to you why the seemingly profits is a phantom. When the government introduced the animal called subsidy, and I call it an animal because in an economic system like Kenya, you don't do command economy at the place of retail and a capitalist economic model at the place of sourcing. When they introduce subsidy, that comes with a condition that multinationals give to EPRA, that they have to remove as an element we call wholesale capping. The reason is the government does not have money to give at the point of subsidy. So they wait for so long, like the debt they just cleared now, which was inherited from the last regime of about 43 billion Kenya shilling, the government had to pay using a bond. And the subsidy was done when $1 was 120 per shilling, $1.20, and it was paid when the dollar was 145. This gave a serious exposure in forex losses, where nobody pays. So what does this spell to the independent market? The multinationals, they now get a leverage to sell to us at the prices they want, because there's no capping of the wholesale. So as a trader, I end up now buying product almost at the same price that you are buying at the pump, and I'm supposed to sell at a given capping, the wholesale, the retail price. So for me and my association member, most of us were dropping out of the market, buy and buy, until last month but one, when that wholesale cap was reinstituted, but was then again taken off the day they introduced the standardization.
So you don't like subsidies?
Subsidies is the worst form of market economy.
Do they actually even exist?
It is to me, if I was to explain subsidy in my view, it is a mongrel. It is literally a lie. Reason being, you and I know that the government does not have anywhere else it gets money other than taxes. So when you purport to subsidize the petroleum, where will you get money to pay for that subsidy? So you'll still have to tax the same people,
but
to get more money.
To get more money to pay for the taxes.
But Chomba, this fuel that we consume,
yes,
the bulk of what we pay for is taxes.
That's true.
So if you're asking where the government gets the money from, and it's itemized, there's a tax for everything, whether it's a road levy, whether it's a fluctuation of the dollar. The EPRA knew, they've added everything to it. So essentially, this thing they're calling subsidy is already factored in there.
And when they levy it on us, subsidy, it is now becomes a tax on top of a tax.
But that's what I marvel at, because we've already paid for it. Now they're asking us to pay for it again.
And what that does, it also exacerbates the model of the economy. Because at the end of the day, what that subsidy does, it has discouraged. I can tell you this, if they did not increase the fuel at the cost they did, and I'm very sorry that it happened, because the common mwananchi is suffering. The canvas is, we would have had a serious problem, because most of the oil marketers who do not have access to serious credit lines that can sustain their debts of subsidy being kept by government for months and months, were dropping out of the importation market. And what this would spell now a serious security issue in terms of security of supply. So subsidy was coming, unless the government has a place where they will get money and they pay at the point of subsidy. If they insist on keeping that subsidy money for the oil marketers, most of the oil marketers would drop and have been dropping out of the importation market. So we have gotten to ourselves to a place where, you remember the electricity sometimes back, where we were given two options. Either we have intermittent supply or we pay more.
Where does the Petroleum Development Levy come in all of this? Because I'm reminded that it's actually not what we are seeing with these prices. It's actually not a subsidy. That it's a levy that has been introduced in order to stabilize the price.
There has been a Petroleum Development Levy previously of 40 cents per litre. Then it was introduced last year. It was increased to 5 shillings and 40 cents. Whether you know it or not, for every litre you fuel at the petrol station, you pay 5 shillings and 40 cents. This is ostensibly to take care of astronomical price increases. Unfortunately, what has been happening in the country is that the range with which, the percentage with which the prices are increasing is way beyond the amount of money that we charge for stabilization. Whereas when we are increasing the prices with about 16 shillings, the stabilization that we charge is 5 shillings and 40 cents. So it will not suffice to take care of that kind of rise. And the kitty is small, is the money cannot take care or effectively take care of the price increase that is reflected here after the global computation. So it is there, but it's not sufficient. It is like less than even a quarter of the increase.
Now in Kenya, we have two components that are very important for Kenyans that are very expensive.
Yes.
Or they're not even there. One is the food sector, one is the energy sector. Now that, I don't know, maybe City will help us with what's happening with Turkana oil. This has been, some energy crisis has been in the country for some time. Do you think it's also an avenue for the Ministry of Energy to invest in renewable energy in some parts, like in northern Kenya? We have enough sun, so we can invest in solar energy, and we have a big chunk of land. Northeastern, on the previous NFD region, is the second biggest in the country, and there is enough sun of up to 38 or 40 degrees Celsius. So that's hot. So we can produce solar if the government invests. Then we have enough wind to also power either irrigation or farming or schools or even homesteads. There are people in Mandera and Wajir who are investing in solar because of the interruption of electricity. It's a problem of energy in the country. Now, what is this going to have in the production of food industry and at the farm level? Because there are people who are using diesel to fuel their generators. In my farm, it's around 10 acres, I use 5-6 liters of diesel to run for 6-7 hours. That itself is going to,
it's such a cost.
It's a cost for the farmer, but also cost to the environment. Remember, we had a climate change in the country. So, and majority of these regions, or even in the country here, even Kenya Power is using fuel generators, which are going to affect the climate change we've spoken about. So how do we navigate this? By making sure that in some parts where we have the sun, we can use it for irrigation, we can use it for schooling, we can use it our homestead, we can even use it for cooking. I've seen some part of the world I travel to, people in the interior having this solar. So what
we are doing as an organization, we are not lost on the technological changes that are coming with the issues of renewable energy. And if you want to know that discussion is coming, and it's coming in a way that it will sweep people who refuses to change, you realize most of these multinationals that have been running petroleum today have all rebranded. We used to have Total. Kenya today is Total Energies. Today we have Vivo Energies. Today we have Oryx Energies. We have Galana Energies.
But they still run the same.
The reason why they're doing this is because there's a serious research that is going into renewables, and they want to be part and parcel of it. We, as an organization, we have also partnered and signed serious memorandum of understanding with people like Kenya Renewables, the Kerea. Why? Because most of us are solarizing our stations. We want to run on solar. We want to make sure that we are able to leverage on the e-mobility that is coming. Our places of business, the service stations, we no longer calling them petrol stations nowadays. We are calling them energy centers, because that is where the border guys are coming to change their batteries, the electric batteries. It is the place where we are using now LPG to pump into the vehicles that are LPG as a mode of propulsion for their engines. So we are literally consistent with the climate debate that is happening across the world. And we are also cognizant of the fact that the world is pumping money now towards change in terms of getting consistent with the green energy and the renewables. So we are not lost on that, and we are very careful to
What are we
be
going to
consistent.
see again in the next couple of days? And this is the thing, that in as much as you're saying what you're saying, look, at the end of the day, you're selling the fuel to people. The prices have gone up. What are we likely to see? And what is the hope that the situation could get any better? What are we likely to see? What is going to happen?
Let me give you some statistics that are driving my reasoning today. Kenya today, in terms of taxes, we are the highest in the region in terms of how much we tax fuel. We are taxing around 36%, and Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, they are taxing around 28%. So if the government can work on how to reduce the percentage of the taxes that we have, that would work. But the other thing is, it is also consistent that economies that are bigger are taxing bigger. Today, the highest taxation of petroleum is in India at 69%. Japan at 40-something%, France at 50-something%. What I'm saying is, whereas the smaller economies than Kenya in terms of GDP, the likes of Rwanda, are taxing 28%, higher economies than Kenya are taxing higher, and that appears to be a trend. So for me, if you ask me what we need to do, the government needs to have a way of making sure that the economy can generate money, that now the discussion will not be about fuel costing 210 shillings, because the prices are not likely to come down anytime soon. Then the story will be, how easy is it to make 210 shillings? For instance, I give you an example today.
But sorry, Martin, but the story will be that as a result of fuel prices going higher,
yes,
that certain things will also
go higher too.
Go higher.
Yes,
that's the reality.
Including groceries,
that we are looking at going to buy food, and because of the cost of transportation rising, the cost of food will go up. Because
will go
of
up.
fuel going up, how much you spend on water, how much you spend on getting from point A to
no one
point
is
B.
spared.
Everybody, you can
No one
imagine
is spared.
children who are going to school, for example, and use a bus whereby transport is 10,000 shillings per month, because they're going to have to spend more money to
I've
put
already
fuel in the
received a
tank.
notice for my
It is
own
going
kids.
to go high. It doesn't matter what you touch, short of the air that we breathe, because fuel prices have risen. Everything else will rise. We can dress it up in a pink dress, but it still doesn't look good.
And that's what I'm saying.
On it while you're at it.
And this is what it seems the government is left with very few options. One of the options is to look for money, I don't know where, to subsidize. If that is not feasible, they have to look for a way that they generate enough money in the economy to make sure that as the prices of food goes up, the prices of what Kenyans receive goes up, to make sure that they are able to pay for that. Anything short of that, either way they are done.
You know, we've had this discussion in the studio, and I was of that view, and I'm still of that view, that you see, the only way you bring down the cost of food down is by making sure you produce a lot of it, quite simply. You make sure that the supply is there. Yes. So the money you have can buy. But if that supply is inadequate, it'll be expensive. It's not really very complicated.
I agree.
Okay? Now, if you're talking about subsidy, there's something that goes alongside subsidy. It's called protection. Many nations use that rule to ensure that whatever is produced in the country can compete favorably, meaning whatever is coming in is taxed highly.
Exactly.
So if you want to bring it in by all means. But the local product will have perhaps a bigger market. Now, these are not things that I'm an expert in, but anyone who understands economics will tell you it is not as complicated as it's being made to seem. It is true. The cost of fuel, and these costs are going up all over the world, but how are they coping? On this continent, Nigeria had similar problems. How did they deal with it? They're not as polite as us. No, they're not.
No, we said we are staying at home.
No, they're not. They're not. They're not. Their case was a subsidy was removed. So it meant everything just shot up.
Yeah.
My friend, they didn't sit back and say, oh, so this is what has happened. okay, let's go and talk to the government and see. They took action.
It's true. So, and that's why I'm saying in Kenya today, the options that we have is that the government will have to look for, because I remember I told you, the government in Kenya does not own even a single liter of fuel. So for them, they'll have to look for money or ways that are ingenious. I don't know how.
Almost 50%. Look, almost 50% of the cost of this fuel that you put in your tank is taxes. Almost 50% of that number.
Yeah, it's 77 shillings against 210.
It's
Okay.
around, it's around 40. It's
Yeah,
around
that's why I said almost 50%, right?
It's quite,
Yes.
it's quite.
Are
She's
we
right when she
saying
says almost
50%?
Yes.
Absolutely. So are we saying that it is impossible for the government to look, because this is one of the things that you're talking about, us be practical to see the reality. Is it impossible that we see a reduction on these taxes, on these levies? Is it absolutely necessary? If we're able to do a trace on this particular levy, because there are quite a number of them.
There are 7 levies in total and 2
Can
taxes.
we see where these levies actually go? For you to be able to ask yourself, is this one then absolutely necessary in its entirety? Or could there be a reduction here, here, and here to see the overall reduction on this price of fuel? I think that's practical.
Actually, I agree with you 100%. Actually, I do not just look at it from the tax per se. I look at the restructuring of the whole sale and taxation regime of the importation and the taxation regime of the sale of petroleum in this country. There are things that are there which appears to be cast on stone, but I would, if I was in a position to advise, I would advise that we need to relook at the whole model so that we look at where we don't have efficiencies. Because some of these things, like if you ask me today, we have a levy that Kenya Pipeline will charge us. There are things that we call losses. And if you ask me, it's like we pay for somebody's inefficiency. Because if I ask you to, it's the way we argue that when you pay an MP a sitting allowance, when they have gone to the parliament to sit, you wonder in the first place you are sending them.
So what does the salary do?
Yes, it's the same thing.
In other allowances, mortgages.
Yeah. So if I'm paying you to transport fuel for me, then you charge me fuel losses during transportation, you are simply asking me to pay for your inefficiency, and I'm still paying you. So for me, I would call for a whole relook at the structure of importation and marketing of the petroleum product in the country, so that we can create efficiency and curb some losses that goes into the costs that people bear at the pump level.
Perhaps we should ask the question, when we looked at these structures, who were they put in place to favor? Because I know for a fact that people in these ministries and people who do these things are not stupid people. They're actually people who know what to do and how to do it. So why choose this path?
Sometimes to me, if it's people, I believe and I think that sometimes people fear to upset status quo. In my view, for reasons I don't know, maybe some of these status quo are beholden.
Allow me to help you, please. If people find something beneficial to them, they will not.
They will not ruffle feathers if they are benefiting from the system.
If it really doesn't benefit them, they will fight to change it.
I agree. I think
like you now. If this system favored you, would you be in the studio talking to us about these things?
I would be very quiet somewhere, probably enjoying the benefits.
Exactly.
You're here because you're being pitched.
Yeah, because
and you can see extinction coming, and you can see what's bringing it about. And you're saying, no. We are not going to allow this to happen.
Yes. And I think it's about time that people became magnanimous enough to think that we can restructure some of the systems that we have already in place. I know some of them.
Chomba, don't rely on magnanimity in these issues. Huh?
Abdullah, I want to give you a couple of minutes. I mean, what would your message be here we're talking about how change must come about?
I am a very angry Kenyan. I want everybody to be angry. I want Raila to take a sabbatical leave until December, so that Kenyans will know that we have 53 million Kenyans in this country who must address the president and the government and tell them, do not give us stories, do not give us, political propaganda. We have done that during the election. Let us deal with the politics of economics. And cost of good to come down. Whatever you have to do, you ask for the job, we give it to you. We don't want stories.
Simple as that.
Yes. We have been talking for the last 4 hours to the same effect.
Everything is kind of...
It's time for President Ruto to act. We were told that he takes time to react. We don't want him to react. We want him to act and bring credible men. This country has no short of men. Some of his cabinet ministers or cabinet secretaries have been called dumb and dull by Kenyans when they come on TV. They are embarrassing him. And to some extent, he is responsible for that because he chose those people because they were in election. He didn't choose them because they were qualified. There are many Kenyans in this country who care about the country, who have integrity, who will tell him the truth, who do not need to steal. How much money can you eat a day? We are told that the amount of money this guy eats, it's going to serve them in the next 85 years. You're already 70.
That's just enough, isn't it? In a few seconds from you, Chomba,
for me, I would want to say that one of the biggest reasons why our president was elected en masse, I would say, is because people saw the capacity in him to superintend over the affairs of this country. I am persuaded that he has the capacity and he has the goodwill and he has the drive, the what we call the fire in the belly. Maybe some of the people within the administration may have some shortcoming, but I want to say to Mr. President that we still believe and still hope and still know that you have the capacity to bring us to the other side safely. Exercise that capacity that we voted for.
Asante sana, Martin Chomba, for being our guest this hour. Thank you very much for that. We'll see how things unfold.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.